Welcome to the Dr. G Show.
Hi, everybody.
This is episode 174, and today we're finishing up our 5 things that make you chronically sick and dying prematurely. And we have our special guest. I'm Dr. G, and I do functional lifestyle medicine here in Wichita. And we have patients from all around the world that actually come see us. And today we have our special guest,
Suzanne. Hi, everybody.
Sock it or block it?
Block it.
Block it, yeah. So
Could be both.
sock block. That's like a boxing thing.
Yeah.
All right. So
Welcome, everyone.
welcome, and as you guys have questions, feel free to post those. And as you guys join in too, we'll kind of want to hear your feedback with all this. So all the things that we've been talking about is, you know, those things that typically we don't know or our doctors don't know often, as far as like not knowing that food is the actual medicine, that things aren't really genetic, that we cause these things. And especially today, the focus is on the typical management of chronic conditions. So 3 out of every 4 Americans is chronically managing chronic conditions. And then the treatment for almost everybody is just medication. Like we said before, all medication, all 900 synthetic pharmaceuticals came from something that naturally worked already. And so from aspirin to Taxol chemotherapy, it's all natural medicine from the beginning. But when we synthesize a drug, so we synthesize one molecule out of the 10,000 that's in that herb, spice, or micronutrient, what do we call it? Pharmacopoeia. I don't know. Naturally occurring medication.
Yeah.
Naturally occurring medicine.
Right.
When we take one extract out of that and then we synthesize it, we have to add on something extra to make it something that never occurs in nature. And because of that, they can get a patent. Now, adding on something extra will cause problems in a lot of people. So there's a big downfall to only using pharmaceuticals as your main source of treatment. And there's Eleanor and
Hi,
Gina.
Ellen. Hi, beautiful Ellen and Gina.
So glad you guys are joining. So we want to then say, if we're going to take medication, which we shouldn't, or we should, no, I'm not saying that. So there's a time when it's important, and there's a time where it's not.
That's right.
Short term, America is the #1 for emergency care, right? If you break your leg, America's the best place to be, and I don't want essential oils and apple cider vinegar if my bone's sticking through my skin, right?
Correct.
Once they got that thing repaired, you want to get the hell out of the hospital, right?
Yeah.
So we are like the 39th in, I think, quality of care, and like 100th in the world for delivery of health care. So we're like one of the worst. We have one of the highest infant mortality rates in the world as for first world countries, and we're cool with that, you know. So this is not the place you want to be for any kind of chronic management. So when we go to the doc and they're like, well, no problem, whatever you have, we'll just give you a pill for that, and you can just take that pill for the rest of your life. They don't really talk about why you're going to have all these weird side effects or what the downside of that is. So when people take birth control, they're at risk of heart attack and stroke. When people take cholesterol medicine, they're at risk of a permanent muscle wasting disease and dementia and a whole bunch of other stuff. But the question is why? So today what we want to do is actually talk about the last part of this concept of, oh, I dropped that, sorry. The last part of this concept, which is the drug nutrition and drug depletions. Drug depletions and drug interactions. So many of the medications that you take, pretty much every single one, they actually deplete very specific nutrients and they block very specific pathways, and there's a consequence to that, especially over time. So this is where we have patients that come in all the time and they're on 1 to 20 different medications, and then they have this weird, bizarre myriad of chronic symptoms that they also have since they start taking the medications, and then basically we have to unwind and figure out what the hell's really going on. But a lot of it's just side effects.
I can mention one side effect that I have from a medication that I'm taking.
Yes.
And it's the potassium.
What?
It's a potassium. It's part of blood pressure control, and so oftentimes too, if you are taking a medication, which sometimes we have to, the manufacturer sometimes, if your pharmacy changes manufacturers, sometimes the coating on the drug can cause a different kind of side effect. For me right now, I'm having a side effect of dizziness. So I was taking the potassium for a little while, and then I ran out, so I went a whole week without it, and then I decided that I would start it again, and it made me really, really dizzy. So I broke it in half, and even that still has those side effects. So there's an interaction sometimes that we have with all of that stuff that, or a result of taking the medication that sometimes can be more detrimental than not taking the medication. And I'm not a doctor, but it's really interesting.
Yeah. And
Hi, Kendra.
Kendra mentioned my shirt. So look, this
Oh
shirt.
my gosh.
This is so this is my friend Jamie, and I probably shouldn't say her name, but I go on photo walks all the time, and so we took this picture in an alleyway, and I loved it. And on the shirt it has the hazmat stuff, but it's corrosive, flammable, and highly explosive.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting about that? This is a picture that they took, y'all. So they actually had that picture.
Yeah.
Where did you get that at? Did you order it from
somewhere? T-shirt kitchen.
T-shirt kitchen.
Clifton Square. So
that's awesome.
I asked on Facebook. That was the first one somebody suggested, so I went there. So they made that for me, but it's my own picture with my photo walk friend, and so I love it.
What a great way to advertise.
So we may advertise what?
Your business or your photo walks. You could get a really good
I should have put Dr. G up there.
If you're not, it looks like everybody, your friends.
Oh, don't
your
say
friends
T-shirt kit. They didn't give me a discount.
Oh,
so.
Well, maybe they will if you keep mentioning their names. But however, he really is a good photographer. I mean, he'll take some pictures and he'll adjust some qualities of the picture, but it is edgy. I love them, and there's so much color. And I put color in my living room, so I'm gonna be hitting you up for some of your photos.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
I gotta have an art show.
Yes.
You gotta help me with my art show.
Hey, Aaliyah. Good to see you.
So.
Yeah. Thank you.
You got me all embarrassed about it. Okay.
Mustard. Okay.
So
anyway, he's very talented, not just as a doctor.
So me and Jamie have matching shirts. So we're gonna go on a
Yeah.
photo walk, wearing our own photos on our shirts. I think that would be super funny.
That's awesome.
So.
Anyway, back to the medications.
So with medications.
Gotta be careful about the side effects.
I think we said this before, but just I love this kind of the circle that medications went. So 100 years ago they created aspirin. Aspirin is from willow bark, so you can go out to your tree, pull some bark off a tree, get rid of your headache without killing your kidney,
needles.
right?
Yeah.
And then, but if you take and synthesize one molecule in there and give it to people as aspirin, as a derivative of willow bark, suddenly it's the leading cause of kidney failure in the United States. Acetaminophen, it's the leading cause of liver failure in the United States. 52% of all liver failures, 70% are women, and the average age is 36 years old. So prime of your life, that medication that is synthesized can literally kill you in the prime, right? So that's crazy. Even Tamiflu, everybody's like, well, we got to take Tamiflu for coronavirus. But Tamiflu is from Chinese star anise. So that
Wow.
licorice flavor
Yeah.
that you put,
Yeah.
not licorice candy. But
The star
that's what
anise.
they created the drug from. Hydroxychloroquine that they're all excited about, that's from a plant that's been used for thousands of years for boosting your immune system. And so, anything that's arabidinoglycan activity, like pine needles, echinacea, turmeric. I mean, again, there's medication forms of these, but they've already existed for thousands of years. If you take ginger, so I always, I gotta get new examples. I'm always saying the same examples. So if you've ever been a patient, you've probably heard this a million times, or at least one time. I say it a million times, they only hear it one time. So maybe it isn't that big of a deal. But if you look at something like ginger, not Marianne and not the professor, but ginger is a cheap-ass root that's a very powerful pain reliever. You have 3 pathways for pain inflammation. COX-1, COX-2, and 5 locks. Not COX-3.
I was going to say that.
Damn it. I was hoping you were saying it. So, ginger blocks COX-2 pathway. COX-1 is aspirin, which then leads to bleeding disorders and heart attacks. And bleeding disorders, heart attacks, 70%, and kidney failure. And then the COX-2 pathway for pain and inflammation. Ginger is a COX-2 inhibitor. So they created Mobix, Celebrex, Vioxx, which are COX-2 inhibitors, very, very expensive medications. But Vioxx killed 35,000 people during the clinical trials by using a synthetic derivative to block that same pathway. But it also increased your risk of heart attack by 38%, which naproxen and ibuprofen, they already increased it by like 18%. Like 1 out of 5 people are going to have a heart attack, or let's say no, I'm not going to say it like that. So 18%, I believe, increase of heart attack and stroke by taking aspirin and ibuprofen. So then when they came out with COX-2s, it was actually at almost double your risk of heart attack and stroke. And that's because that COX-2 pathway doesn't just get rid of pain and inflammation, but it also affects cardiovascular tissue. So if you take a medication for pain chronically, because you're causing chronic pain, then all of a sudden you have a heart attack or stroke, and then that becomes the side effect of that medication. But ginger, the original thing, right? Ginger not only has that one COX-2 inhibitor property, but it has 10,000 or more other properties and biochemicals in there. So you deplaque arteries, so you have less risk of heart attack and stroke with that. So this is where, like, taking the root versus taking the one derivative that's synthesized and modified, it can be catastrophically different with your outcomes.
And and on even a different level, when you're talking about those medications that are blocking, then what happens with the energy? Even if you're blocking arteries, like or any kind of like acetaminophen or whatever, imagine how that stops everything else, and it's like a trickle effect. It just goes, it can go, I'm sure, to different organs, and
it's especially because
everything works in harmony.
Right.
And so once we start using drugs to block certain pains or whatever, it's going to block other things too. So harmony is not in our bodies anymore.
Right. Much like you see people that take antidepressants. So antidepressants, if you guys don't know, even WebMD now says that you are more likely to be depressed. 70% of people that take antidepressants will end up more depressed than they were before they started, and that's because it's never been a neurotransmitter problem. And so finally, the research has been enough that even WebMD is like, it's not real, it's not a neurotransmitter problem, 60 years of research, it's never been supported. But what's even worse is it downregulates your own neurotransmitters. So it tricks your body to think you have more, but everything in the body works off negative feedback, so then your body makes less, and then you end up more depressed because of that. And so if you didn't have one before, now you have suppression of neurotransmitters.
And when he's talking about neurotransmitters, that means that your brain is no longer firing naturally,
right,
or is influenced.
Yeah, and so then that cascade response for that energy is basically people become very muted. And so then everything in life just kind of goes downhill and really sucks. And so, sure, you may not be anxious anymore, but you feel nothing anymore. So all that energy and all that, the plays of this affects this, and that goes to this system, like most all your serotonin actually is on platelets floating around creating bone. And so 95% of your serotonin is not in the brain. And so if you lower it everywhere, and then we can literally cause spontaneous fractures in research using antidepressants.
Wow.
And so then we have a no problem with that. So then if you have a risk of fractures, well, we'll just give you Forteo, which is an osteoclast inhibitor. And the osteoclast inhibitor, your bones work by blast building, clast destroying. And so you constantly tearing down old bone, putting new bone, so you always have the strongest bones possible. That's why women in other countries can walk around and not break their hips.
When they're
right?
100.
Yeah. But if you take a drug that then, so you created this problem, so now you take this other drug to counteract that problem, but it blocks the osteoclast, so now all you do is build new bone over old bone, and now you have better x-rays or DEXA scans, but you're actually building weaker bones, and then of course then we see people have more spontaneous fractures that are on those bone building medications, because the reality is strong muscles make strong bones. So then once you have that, that's not a problem. We'll just give you another thing and another thing. And so you create this cascade of medications. We had a patient one time when I was in surgery rounds. She was on, it was a little lady, I think 80, on 30 medications. And my mentor, Dr. Grusin, was just like, he had no clue. Would she just die if we took her off the medicines before the surgery? Like, we have no earthly idea. And pharmacists, there's a study that shows that within pharmacology, if you take more than 3 drugs, they cannot predict what the hell happens, because we are actually this little chemistry experiment.
That's interesting.
Where you take this pill and this pill and this pill and you put it in the gut. Well, things start to break apart because of the acid, and then you start causing chemical reactions, and things can bind up, and they can literally create other things.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
there's
and that makes sense.
There's a whole risk to that.
Yeah.
That we have no earthly idea what the hell happens.
Kendra asks 2 questions. How do you suggest people wean off of antidepressants, and are there natural antidepressants? Yes.
Yeah, so
Thanks for the question, Kendra.
so this is really good, and so we got to be careful.
Hi,
and
Deanna.
and we got to follow a strict line here, okay?
Yeah.
So I don't prescribe medications.
Right.
I can't tell you to go off medications. But what we do here is create it to where you don't need chronic medication management. And so then some people wean themselves, some people wean through their primary or their specialist, but the line in the sand is you always listen to your prescriber and you do exactly what they say no matter what. So that's the line we're going to say. So, but a lot of times, historically, if you downregulate your neurotransmitters, and then typically they'll end up on an effexor, or which then they'll affect the dopamine, or selective serotonin, selective dopamine receptors, maybe epinephrine ones, and then eventually they put you on Abilify. So sometimes they've been on this cocktail, and it basically suppresses all these things that allow you to feel good. So then if you go off those immediately, and you haven't fixed why, then all of a sudden you have nothing going on. Your body has to suddenly recover and figure out through negative feedback loops how to make enough hormones to get you back to where you're feeling good. So some people fall off the rails with that. Now, what we've found in practice over the last 17 years is that typically if you change your lifestyle that creates the problem, then people don't have problems going off medications, right? Again, through their provider is the best. And that's, it's not a miracle or anything like that. It's just,
It's a process.
if you create it, you don't need it. But then the second part of the question you have is like, well, is there natural ones? Well, you don't want to do natural ones because it is not a neurotransmitter problem. Now, if you do, so serotonin is made from tryptophan. Tryptophan is just a protein that's in food. All your food's going to have tryptophan. You eat tryptophan, it goes into your biochemistry, and it goes into all these different pathways, but it can go into the neurotransmitter pathway. And then it uses magnesium, B6, maybe zinc, and then it creates 5-hydrotryptophan, and then that goes through another conversion process, and that makes 5-hydrotryptophan, then that makes serotonin. And then serotonin through SAMe converts to melatonin. So sleep and mood are tightly regulated, even though melatonin does not put you to sleep. GABA puts you to sleep. But melatonin is produced when the sun hits the sunset. It produces a red hue that goes through your eyes, and then that tells your brain, oh, the sun's going down, let's start winding things down to get ready to go to sleep. And then GABA puts you to sleep. So, all that being said, basically, if your body should be producing all the serotonin, all the melatonin you need, because it comes from tryptophan. Now, if you have a methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase mutation, then that will
That was a
suppress
long one.
your folate pathways, and then the folate pathway is what you do, what you use to make bioterapin. And bioterapin, or BH4, is the precursor to converting things like octopamine and phenylalanine and serotonin and melatonin. That can be a big problem. So that's where hard to treat patients, you really want that genetic test with that. We've done shows about that one. And that's the research that we do at KU Medical School for anxiety, depression, those kind of things. But the vast majority of people's anxiety and depression is just life out of balance.
Absolutely.
That's all it is. You can drink coffee and put yourself in anxiety. You can eat enough sugar, add it to your food to cause anxiety. You can put sugar in the coffee, cause anxiety. You can get a big black tea, big gulp of, that's right, and put yourself in anxiety. Or you can eat enough chocolate and soda to put yourself in anxiety. But do you just medicate that? Or do you just stop
doing that?
Right? So functional lifestyle
Right.
medicine is know how physiology works, know what we do to mess it up, and then stop messing it up. So even taking things like St. John's wort, sure, that, again, anything short term is fine, but if you have to do it long term, there's a problem. Anything that's chronic is, what do I eat, drink, breathe, rub on my skin, what do I wear? So a lot of times other countries, they do adaptogens. There's nothing wrong with adaptogens. And again, that lowers cortisol if it's too high, but it raises it if it's too low. So it doesn't mess up anything. And so every country has that, except for Americans, but Native Americans do, right? They have holy basil or tulsi. But ashwagandha, schistosandra, rhodiola, pretty much anything that sounds crazy is an adaptogen that makes you feel balanced. But the question comes back to, why are you out of balance? So if kids are enrolling in school and you got the COVID thing, and you're just like, I don't know what the hell's going on, and you know it's going to be this little blip, then just amp up on adaptogens, and it's going to be fine, right? Meditate, eventually do some yoga, do more walking, get sunlight.
Make some decisions to get yourself in that position to do those small things.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't take. It takes a decision.
Yeah.
Or you can just make an appointment to go to a doctor, and then you have it for the rest of,
Yeah, as long as you take that medication. And that's where we see,
And
like,
we don't want that.
Crohn's patients all the time. They will get to the point where they are just like, the diarrhea's gone, the urgency's gone, everything's just beautiful, but they have these little glitches left. Well, the medication they put them on actually causes that problem.
Ailment.
And that's the other thing. Almost every medication you take, it literally causes the thing that you're treating. So then when they go back to the GI doctor about getting off those, all of a sudden, boom, now their gut works and they don't have to worry about anything, and then they get used to that, and then like, holy crap, I'm Crohn's free, or ulcerative colitis free, or eczema free, migraine free, that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, and somebody told me a little story today about a friend that they had Crohn's, and the number one thing that they drink is Coke.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And Coke will give you diarrhea.
well, in itself, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if we're doing things like that, knowing we have issues, think again. There's really some decisions to be made. Like,
Yeah.
stop drinking the Coke and see where that gets you headed in the right direction, or other things that we're choosing to do in our life too.
And if you use Coke Just make sure you get organic straws, not the plastic straws because they're toxic. Or a $100 bill because you got to represent.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh. That's a different crowd.
That's a different thing.
Different crowd.
So Kendra says, I've changed my diet and I exercise every day now. Yes, I started walking 2 times a day. I don't always get to do it. I've been, it's a little longer. Hold on. Things were not right. So Kendra needs an appointment with you.
She needs one.
Yeah.
Well, and what's funny too, Kendra, is like,
Hi, Paul.
we have like 4 things that we go through. Now, used to, I'd only do 2 things and a little glimpse of the 3rd thing, which was, you know, change their food as medicine, and then get rid of all the chemical toxic crap that interferes with biochemical pathways. And then that fixes most people, right? But I realized I was missing a big chunk of why people are doing what they're doing. And it was the hormonal, the emotional, the neuroplasticity stuff.
Exactly.
I totally ignored because, again, back then I was a coping kind of person. It was wear a suit of armor, be strong, rub dirt in it. And after my divorce, I just like finally felt probably like my patients feel, and I had to suddenly fix that part of me, the inside of me, as opposed to the mechanical. So as a guy, as a doctor, we're kind of mechanical, and we're just like, what do we need for the diagnosis? What do we need for the treatment? And all that social aspect of emotions and healing, that like, I don't want to hear about all that stuff, right? But my world radically changed, and I changed. And so literally, like, my whole treatment plan with patients doubled. It was like, we talk about food as medicine, we talk about chemical toxicity that interferes with your biochemistry, and then we talk about hormones and how to stop exhausting them, and then we talk about how to create resiliency and neuroplasticity. And then I noticed that people were really more complete healing, because it was more a patchwork of just stop causing problems, stop causing the problem.
Right.
You know, stop messing up the physiology, stop messing up that hard-coded kind of hard science stuff. But now with the other part, that's way better. So when you're talking about like anxiety, depression, those kind of things, it really is, everybody has to make those kind of systemic changes to decide, become self-aware,
That's right.
make changes and practice changes to basically create a lifestyle that's even worth living.
And live that.
And live it, yeah. And it won't be perfect, but holy crap, you no longer get knocked down, you get back up quicker, and you recover faster. Because the world is always going to have its good and its bad. Bad people are going to do bad things to you, good people are going to do bad things to you, but you get to be happy regardless of situation, regardless of other people. And then you start to realize, well, all these other countries that are healthier and happier than Americans, it's not rocket science. It really is just choosing what we allow for stress and how we then live a lifestyle that balances out. Stress goes up, what are we going to do to bring it back down? As long as you bring it back down, you can have all the catastrophe, all the stress you want.
Right.
If it goes this high, great. Bring it back down. And as long as you keep practicing those kind of resiliency factors and neuroplasticity, then suddenly you're just balanced even in the same trauma, the same stress, and you don't have to go through the, well, maybe I'm broken and I'll just take medication for the rest of my life and then deal with the side effects and take more medication and do all that. You just kind of get to be whole, you know? Mm-hmm. And so you've got to watch me go through that whole transformation.
I love it. I love watching
So-
transformations. Even myself, having this last couple 3 or 4 months has been a real transforming experience for me.
Yeah.
The key word that you used is balance.
Yes.
And this is not just with one thing, but this is all things. In all things that we do, that we choose for our lives, they're getting into balance and understanding that we're all different in a lot of different ways. And even how sometimes we assimilate things, like what you just were talking about, the effects of drugs on me might be different than it is on you.
Yeah.
And so we have to take all those little things into consideration and then create balance in that and understand what it's doing and etc. But I have a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Speaking of drugs, okay?
I didn't do crack. That was
that.
false charges.
No, here's so I don't know.
Do you need some crack?
20 years ago or so, I read an article on vitamin D. I think we've had this conversation before. Is vitamin D real?
Yeah.
Or is vitamin D3 real? Because the article read, and this was a big, deep research. Some places had put the effort into this. That vitamin D is actually not real. There is not a real vitamin D. There's a vitamin D3 and the vitamin D3 from the sun and etc.
Right.
So when we created vitamin D, which was probably in the 40s, we started sticking it in the milk and the whole 9 yards. What they were talking about is that this synthetic vitamin D actually goes into your system, and so, oh my gosh, I'm having this problem. I don't feel right. Whatever doctor says, here, amp your vitamin D up.
Right.
Take this pill, this synthetic vitamin D. So you take the pill. What the pill does, and you start feeling better, because what that pill does is it reaches out to the cells, and it starts coating the cells. Now I can't remember what the name of the actual natural coating that keeps cells healthy and repaired or whatever, or repairs them.
The phospholipid bilayer?
Yes, that
Okay.
right there. So what happens is the synthetic vitamin D, what normally happens in the cells is the vitamin D3 will coat the cells and help that cell be, healthy and happy. But the vitamin D, the synthetic vitamin D, coats the cell, but typical reaction is it's supposed to take care of the cell, and then it breaks away, and the cell is free to do its job. The vitamin D, the synthetic vitamin D, does not break away. So that cell dies.
Oh.
It was the theory behind this article that I read. So does that make sense?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's pretty cool because my friend from college, grad school, Paul Frank.
Yeah. He's on here.
Is he?
He is.
So I listened to his Vitamin E podcast, and it was awesome because he's super nerdy like I am, to where he like, I want to know how it was all created. Like, how did we get here, right? So if you read like Michael Pollan's book, In Defense of Food, it's a good book.
Yeah.
Things have really changed, and so that would actually be a good talk for us to do sometime too. Is the kind of bastardization of nutrition, because we talk about drugs all the time, medications, how they interfere with those pathways, but most people don't know, like, vitamin E is not really vitamin E, and synthetic DL-tocopherol is like 1/8 vitamin E synthesized from petroleum that rotates both ways on the axis of the double bond, and that causes cancer and heart disease. But if you eat real vitamin E that's in food, it doesn't. It actually heals everything, right?
Absolutely.
So with the vitamin D part, so the way vitamin D works is there is D2, D3 kind of concept with that, right? I mean, you can get that tested.
What's naturally occurring in the body.
But when the sun hits your skin, it changes cholesterol into 7-ketocalciferol. And then that floats around to your liver and becomes 25-OH. And then it goes to your kidney and becomes 1,25-OH, and that's the actual active form of real vitamin D. The sun makes it, your liver makes 60-80% of your cholesterol. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease. You get a bunch from your food. That's wonderful. Testosterone is cholesterol, vitamin D is cholesterol. Don't lower cholesterol, right? Yeah. So that's really the deal. Is like sometimes lab-wise they'll test just the 25-OH for some reason. But 1,25-OH is the actual active ingredient. So a lot of times when they do lab testing, they're testing, and basically the supplement and your endogenous production basically are lumped together in the lab test. And so if Dr. Frank, if you have done one on vitamin D, post that link, because I would love to hear that too.
It would be awesome. Oh, I should look it up.
So
keep talking.
Vitamin D2 though is synthetic. Vitamin D2 is the ones that they usually prescribe, and those are horribly toxic and damaging. But vitamin D3 that we get as a supplement is actually from lanolin from sheep's wool. So it's a non-toxic form, but it's not real vitamin D that you actually make. And so the vitamin D that they're going to add to food is going to be D2. So it's the synthetic one that causes harm. The vitamin E that they add to food is going to be the one that's harm. But food actually has the bioactive natural form.
Okay.
So.
Wow. You know, and he talks to me like I know all that stuff.
You're the one telling me about this stuff. What are you talking about?
I mean all the DOHA, TLPs and stuff.
So I want to do two things as we kind of go in the second half of the show. Is one, and you guys definitely feel free to post your questions and comments too. But I want to talk about statins specifically.
Yes.
Because statins and make sure I talk about proton pump inhibitors. But the Iowa Pharmacopoeia, prescription whatever guidelines, they have the strongest warning for statins and proton pump inhibitors or acid blockers or reflux meds because they cause catastrophic damage for any kind of chronic use. But for this, I want to pull up a few of these if I can read this. So these are some common medications and then what nutrients they deplete. So if you look at something like antibiotics, I'm going to need...
A little bit light?
No, let's see.
Oh, that's tiny writing. I'm not sure you could read that even if it was bright lights.
We have it all dark and romantic in here.
Well, it just kind of keeps, the lines.
Oh, I know.
Go ahead.
No.
Both of our phones are going.
Both of our phones are going, so we don't have a light. Okay, I'm going to try to read this, and this is going to show...
Here. Let's do
What?
this. Doesn't this iPad have one of those lights?
Oh, I don't know. It's okay.
Here.
That's what we should...
I don't
We should magnify it. Getting old or something.
Here, take a picture of it. Here.
Alright, let's see. Alright, we're going to do... Yeah, that's way better.
We're going to work this out.
Okay. Technology. Alright, so we're going to do
Oh,
this.
it's blurry.
It's okay.
Oh.
This is what... This is like a picture of Bigfoot because it's all blurry. Okay.
I love how spontaneous we are here.
Okay, so...
Can you read it?
Okay, so if you take in antibiotics, it causes a whole series of problems, right? Now, antibiotics that you need, that's fine. There's a lot of naturally occurring, thousands of naturally occurring antibiotics, but also synthetic ones. But they block vitamin B1, B2, B6, vitamin K, biotin, so then your hair falls out.
Guys,
Is that resveratrol?
maybe that's why guys have balding so much these days. Oh, there's a lot of other stuff too.
Not me.
No, dude, you're never gonna be bald.
I know. My dad died with a great set of hair too.
Did he?
Um,
Thanks, Paul. Paul posted for all of y'all.
oh, he did?
Paul posted the link. Thanks, Paul. On vitamin D. That's been one of my
Sweet.
biggest things. Like, it's so hyped.
So then antibiotics also vitamin C, B12, magnesium, and so on. So there's several others I can't read on here. But what that means is
Magnesium too?
every single system those run, those all then systematically decrease or suppress. If you look at, no, I can't read this at all.
It is 174.
This is the worst. All right.
I was
Okay.
trying to find mine. But I
Okay.
can't find it.
So then if we look at antacids, they block, so antacids or reflux medications, they're blocking calcium, so then you get weak bones. Folic acid, which then ends up with depression, decreased folate, thyroid, sleep, mood, all those problems. Zinc for your immune system, and then vitamin B12, B1, B2, and B6. And so basically, those proton pump inhibitors for acid blockers, which are just caused by what you're doing. It's wheat, dairy, nitrates in meat, sulfites. It's just processed crappy food. Once you get rid of those, reflux goes away like that, right?
That's right.
But you'll end up with osteoporosis, and then when you get rid of B vitamins, everything falls apart. And B vitamins, especially things like B12 and like the methylated B12 methylated folate or methyl tetrahydrofolate, those literally repair your DNA at the rate of 10,000 times per day per cell. So 100 trillion times 10,000. And if you are not fixing those pathways, then you're going to end up with more mutations, and one of those big ones is going to be cancer, right?
Well, and that's what before all of this vitamin D stuff came out, my theory, my personal theory, is when those cells that are coated with that vitamin D stick together, what is that?
Clots.
Clots,
Yeah.
Cancer, because they also...
Right.
They just start clumping together, and then you've got this big old clump of
because if you
unliving
damage...
thing in your body.
That's like the vitamin E, too. Like, if you damage that, then you damage cells, and they start clumping together.
Hi, Lisa.
So antidepressants is coenzyme Q10 and vitamin B2 and melatonin. So now you can't sleep, and coenzyme coenzyme Q10 is all the energy in the body. Every single cell in your body it uses CoQ10 to basically have cellular energy. So then everything slows down. So you're like, oh, okay, I have depression, so I'm going to take this pill, and now suddenly I don't feel like I want to do anything. But I don't feel so sad anymore or anxious. But like everything in your life should slow down. And they use, just so you know, they use antidepressants for sex offenders because it gets rid of sex drive. So then you have people are like, oh, I'm depressed, I don't feel like I can have sex and all this kind of stuff. So then I'm going to take a pill that they give sex offenders, so then I don't feel like I want to have sex. And we had this weird patient one time that they had spontaneous ejaculation with their antidepressants. So that's great. That's nice.
Kendra says, can you grow back thinning hair?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thinning hair. Okay, so I'm going to take off I like this. All right, so thinning hair.
That's why I'm going to make that sound effect every time.
So thinning hair, hair follicles do lots of different things. They actually make these like all these little hormones and stuff that kind of regulates other hair follicles and then systemically. But making hair is the last thing it makes. If you don't make hair and all your hair falls out, who gives a shit? Your body has other priorities. So if you cannot get enough nutrition, if you are too stressed all the time, then your body will use those resources for other things that are more important than growing hair. Your hair will start to thin, you'll start to go bald, but the minute you stop causing that, then your hair has enough to do hair and all the other things that it does. Mm-hmm. So,
there you go.
Ready?
Yes.
All right, so then with anti-inflammatory, so like pain meds, minerals, calcium, magnesium, potassium, selenium, zinc. So your thyroid goes to hell. So with pain relievers, you're like, okay, I'm going to chronically eat an inflammatory diet. So our diets are 40 times inflammatory as anti-inflammatory. And then I'm going to take a pain reliever. And then it's going to cause me to have osteoporosis and muscle spasms, and I can't sleep, and I can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep, and then I have a poor immune system. But at least I can still eat my inflammatory diet. But once you switch that, so like one serving of cold water fatty fish like salmon, tuna, halibut, mackerel, cod, sardines is just as effective as one full strength ibuprofen for getting rid of pain and inflammation without killing your kidneys and liver in the process. So then you don't have to manage pain. Stop eating pain, start eating away pain, and now you don't have to kill yourself eating pain.
And second to that is a lot of times it's just body function. So you have maybe a headache, there's also pressure points, but I think what happens is we're in such a rush society that taking a pill is a lot faster than doing a scalp massage or doing acupressure or, putting your head, for me, sometimes is putting my head on a heating pad if I have a headache, or if it's frontal, what's causing it? What's causing the issue?
Typically men. No? Is that not true?
It depends.
It's always men.
It depends.
Okay, So the last one here before we do statins is
Here we go. 15 more minutes.
So the last one is diabetes medicine. So diabetes medicine, it depletes. Let me find this real quick. Diabetes. Okay, vitamin B6, which is energy. It also prevents kidney stones. So then people get more kidney stones. They have less energy. Folic acid, so mood and behavior, detoxification, sleep, energy, all that disappears. And then CoQ10 again. And what's really messed up, so as we talk about those things, you notice like there's lots of overlaps. People are on typically 3, 4, 5. What's it? Research. I think the average American is on 10 pills. That seems like too much.
That's
10 pills.
That sounds good.
So someone look that up and post that. So the average American, I think, is like on 10 pills. Hey, there's Jackie.
Hi, Jackie.
Um.
Oh, thanks. That's sweet. We love you too.
No.
Thanks for joining us.
She got a new dog.
Awesome.
We should have a dog. We should have a pet talk.
So what was the question?
So when you're taking
The
multiple,
average.
the average number of prescriptions. There's also a couple things you want to look at too. There's TNT, total number to treat. So TNT is, you can look that up. That's total number to treat. So you can look up how many people have to suffer all the side effects for one person to benefit from the medication. And some it's really low, some it's crazy. Like 1,000 people have to suffer before one person has the effect that's desired for that.
Okay, so this is from Georgetown University.
Georgetown.
It was just one that I just pulled up.
Mm-hmm. That's the same.
Okay. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. So
I had it, but
if people, all these people are taking multiple different prescriptions, they're all, so now they're not just getting rid of CoQ10 one way, they're getting CoQ10 3 different ways. And
percent of persons using at least one prescription drug in the past 30 days, 48.4%. That's like 50% of
Half of Americans. Yeah.
Percent of persons using 3 or more prescription drugs in the past 30 days, 24%. Percent of persons using 5 or more prescription drugs in the past 30 days is 12.6%.
Huh.
But that was all the way back to 2016. We know that's changed in 4 years. Oh, this is old news right here.
And Leah says 12.2. So we'll have to figure that out. Is that right? 12.
Well, it's 12.6 here, but that was 2016.
Okay.
But yeah,
That's crazy.
we got to update our info here.
I know, I can look that up. Is
Okay.
it? So one thing, the last thing is our the worst pathway here. So
Oh,
if
12.2 pills.
oh
per
yes, it
person.
is that.
But is that per day?
Yeah, so they might
That's
be
gotta be
taking
per day.
If they might be taking 3 pills a day of one med and then 2 of another. Yeah,
Mhm.
so 12 pills a day. That's probably exactly right. Thank you, Aaliyah.
Thank you.
So then if we look at this. So this is our statin pathway. And one big problem with this is, we have other talks where we did this, but cholesterol does not cause heart disease, first of all. The countries with the highest cholesterol have the fewest heart attacks, up to 70% less, and the countries with the artificially lower cholesterol have more risk of heart attack and stroke. So ER studies show that 70% of people in the U.S. that go in for ER for heart attack, stroke has below 200 cholesterol. So you're now more likely to have a heart attack, stroke in America with artificially lower cholesterol. And if you live in Europe, you have 70% less risk of heart attack and stroke with higher cholesterol. So we have 2 philosophies with that: either inflammation causes heart disease and not cholesterol, or God made bad cholesterol to kill Americans because He hates our freedom. So if you move to a socialist country, then God loves you, and then you don't have heart attacks and strokes. But the minute you go to America, all this freedom, the sun gets. Or no.
I got a headache. Let me just work this out real quick.
So we do this crazy ass thing. So then red yeast rice. So there's this doctor in Japan. I listened to this on NPR Science Friday. I was so excited to hear this. But it's a whole backstory about how statins were created. And I believe he tried like 3,000 different plants, and he couldn't find anything to lower cholesterol. And so he finally did one last one, red yeast rice, and found red yeast rice would actually interfere with cholesterol. So
Interfere or change?
Interfere with that thing.
Okay.
It blocks the pathway. So then Lipitor comes out. So when I was in grad school in research, my actual presentation, which was a shitty presentation for grad school, it was on the research about how Lipitor almost didn't get their patent because they were too close to the original chemical structure of red yeast rice, right? So statins almost didn't happen. But to get that to market, then they said there's 8 doctors that got together and decided 200 was the new number, and they were financially tied to this new company that was going to come out with a new drug. So it wasn't based on research, best evidence, anything. It was just, we need to come out with this drug, and if we just lower cholesterol, we could save the world, and it didn't turn out that way, right? So now we know it's worse. But it's worse because when you block a pathway, you block everything else along that pathway. So with statins, they block up here. You go all the way down here, and you have cholesterol somewhere. Yeah, cholesterol is the very end. So they're blocking all the rest of this to block cholesterol. The problem with that is you also block CoQ10 pathway, so now you don't have energy. Then you end up with congestive heart failure, all those kind of things. You block the TAU pathway for the brain, dolichol pathway for the brain, and then the selenium pathways for the thyroid. So here's the side effects of blocking this pathway. The glial cell inhibition causes senility, amnesia, confusion, dementia, disorientation, brain fog. So that's one of the most common things that you see when people take statins is suddenly their brain doesn't work and they can't remember stuff. That is by far the most common. When you block the dolichol pathway through statins, then you block the way neurotransmitters communicate to each other in the brain. So that causes neuropeptide dysfunction and cell signaling problems, which then your brain literally cannot communicate with itself, and suddenly you can't figure out why you can't do certain movements or why you can't figure out kind of like interacting with your environment. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real weird.
Sensory stuff.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And then the TAU pathway, this is the worst. It literally causes ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. How crappy is it that if your name was Lou Gehrig, so like you're probably gonna get that disease named after you, right? No.
I got a little headache here.
But what happens is it destroys those pathways, so suddenly you can't move your arm. Then you can't move this, and then it works all the way up, and then you can't breathe, and then you die. The TAU pathway also causes Alzheimerism because of dementia, straight up dementia, and muscle atrophy. So not only does it weaken you through CoQ10 suppression, but now your muscles actually get weaker, and through the CoQ10 pathway, it literally causes permanent muscle wasting disease called rhabdomyolysis, which is a fancy word that just means skeletal muscle wasting or disease. But it literally destroys muscles to where they can't grow back. And it can cause Parkinsonism to where people are shaking and having tremors, because you're messing with the ability for neurotransmitters to communicate to each other. So suddenly you can't stop all this extra movement. Now we have Parkinsonism, Alzheimerism. That's just wonderful. Then if you lower CoQ10, and we saw this with a lot of those other medications.
Can that be repaired, like the Parkinson's?
Yeah.
Yes.
When you stop causing it, it goes away.
Okay. Well, I mean, I totally get that all ailments can be. I mean, we're walking energy. Everything that we are is repairable.
Right. It's like pinching the gas line.
Yes.
And then being like, well, my car doesn't work. Well, stop pinching the gas line. Oh, it works
not
now.
Gas.
Right?
Right.
So CoQ10, if you chronically inhibit this through any of those medications we've talked about already, but especially statins, you get chronic fatigue. You get congestive heart failure. Your heart cannot compress like it used to, so now it's trying to compress a weaker heart, and then it tries to build more muscle, and you actually will get a larger heart because of that, and then you could die from that.
Well, congestive heart failure is what that is.
That's right. Shortness of breath.
Yeah.
So basically people can't catch their breath because all the energy to breathe and get oxygen to your body is through CoQ10. Fluid retention, mitochondrial dysfunction, which is a big part of functional medicine, weight gain, that just means more American, diabetes, and then hepatitis, muscle wasting disease, and neuropathy. So suddenly you have all these weird neuropathies going on because nerves can't communicate with nerves, and then you have these weird things happen. And then the selenium pathways, or selenoprotein pathways, you end up with thyroid disorders, and thyroid runs every cell in your body from basal metabolic rate to nerve function, to muscle function, to everything. So then all of a sudden, if you block that pathway, you get all these weird neuropathies. And so literally blocking this pathway to then all these subsequent pathways, it's like, can you give me 4 ways to cause neuropathies? Can you give me like 7 ways so I can like not be able to think anymore? That'd be wonderful. And then will it stop a heart attack? Well, no. But at least I get to suffer and feel horrible until I finally die of inflammatory heart disease. So it's craziness that so again, if we kind of back up and we say, forever, natural medicine was the only medicine. You get that one thing plus 10,000 other things that regulate everything, and then you don't die from side effects of that. To now, 100 years ago, let's take an extract from that, make a different thing on there so we can patent and make some money, and then give you one thing that's altered and then have side effects, and then just treat you from those side effects. And everything becomes another side effect, which becomes another treatment, becomes another side effect, and then people end up with like 35 to 50 things that are falling apart all the time, and then they come into the doctor and like, you got 5 minutes, you better pick one thing, and let's get you with a script and get the hell out of the office.
Yeah.
And nobody ever is going to heal taking things that literally cause more damage. The whole premise of the Hippocratic Oath is first do no harm. Primum non nocere, right? First do no harm. But if your treatment causes harm, then you have to treat the harm. So medicine, so this is one of our 5 things. So if your treatment is like, I'm going to call a guy to repair my window in my house. He says, not a problem, I can repair that, but when I back up, I'm going to knock your mailbox down. And then you go, no problem, I got a mailbox guy. And the mailbox guy's like, dude, I can totally fix your mailbox, but I'm going to leave ruts in your yard. But don't worry, I got a rut guy, and then the rut guy can fix that, but then he runs over your dog in the process, right? So it's
never ending.
This insane thing when you're a doctor and you step back and you go, what the hell are we actually doing here?
Well, and I've actually had a doctor tell me, so why don't you take this one medicine? Because, here you are, you're in this situation. Well, I don't think it was just the one medicine, but because I didn't like the side effects. Couldn't walk up the stairs very well. By the time I got up to the stairs, my legs were on fire. So, would you rather take this pill and have those side effects or die?
Yeah.
And so, what do you say to that? Oh, I'll deal with some side effects for now, and then I need to go on to that healthy stream of life path to keep myself from having those issues again.
Yeah. And you know what?
Do it.
When I was 20, probably 22, just a couple years ago, now this is kind of messed up. So I had a Porsche. I don't want to brag, but it was just like on 16 Candles. I was Jake Ryan. So I'm flying down the highway. Dude, he's like 60-something years old now.
Is he really?
Oh my God.
Somebody look that up.
I just remember watching that show at Nick at Night reruns because I wasn't alive back then.
Yeah, right.
So so I had my Porsche and I'm always flying down the highway and there was a semi here and I was here and so I was just like, I'm gonna get off on the exit. So I veered across 3 lanes of traffic and then was gonna gun it. And when I went around, there was cone after cone after cone that lane ended. And so I go, cluck, 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 and then hit my brakes and swerve behind the diesel. And then I get off on that exit, and then I go see my doctor. And so then the doctor says, your blood pressure is really high. You have hypertension. Which apparently now I know, that's not how you do this. So then I remember asking him, why do I have hypertension? And I still remember this to this day. He said, you know, Patrick, 95% of the time we just don't know. And I was just like, you ain't giving me shit until you can tell me why. Like, I was like, what the hell's going on? You should know this. And when I got into cardiophysiology in grad school, guess what? Oh, we know what causes hypertension, but it's
driving off the highway and hitting a bunch of cones behind a semi.
I know.
I think somebody's going to get hypertension for a few minutes.
That's so messed up.
You know what I mean?
So we end up. Again, if it's the lifestyle causes, nobody does that, but we can give you medication for that, which then lowers your potassium, which then causes heart attacks. So that's kind of messed up. The last thing is the proton pump inhibitors. So thank you for reminding me
You're
that.
welcome.
But your gut digests your food, and then it starts with acid and enzymes that are made in the gut. If you take a medication that blocks that, you do not block those things. You do not kill the bacteria and the viruses that you then swallow, breathe in all the time, and then it changes everything. The first 18 inches after the stomach is in the duodenum is where you absorb something like 80% of your nutrition, and then the other 20 feet is where you slowly absorb the rest of the nutrition. But if you block the main pathway for how we break down food, because you're eating stuff that suppresses the parasympathetic response to hold acid into your stomach, and it weakens, and then acid squirts up and it burns, and then we take medication that just says, well, let's get rid of acid, and then everything falls apart. Like, we had a 20-year-old girl that was having spontaneous fractures because of that. Well, she should. She's not getting nutrition. If you put it in here, it doesn't mean it goes inside your body. You can swallow a string, and you can poop out a string, and you can pull that string back out, right?
Hey.
Maybe the other way. But just because it goes in doesn't mean it's inside your body. And so if you mess up that physiology, and that's why the Iowa Pharmacopoeia
Cosine.
guide, prescription guide, or whatever the hell it is, guidelines, has such a strong warning to that, because literally every other system of your body is going to fall apart. And B12 does not absorb except for intrinsic factor. So intrinsic factor binds to B12, then it can absorb, and then you can run mood, detoxification, memory, brain function, sleep, all these things, right? And repairing DNA and all that. But those proton pump inhibitors decrease your acid production by 99%. For how long? For the rest of your life, right? So the same thing that makes acid is the same pump that produces intrinsic factor. So suddenly everything from B12 falls apart. That's why you always do sublingual when you do those. So to wrap this all up, we talked about the 5 things that are going to keep you chronically sick and dying prematurely that most doctors aren't aware of and most patients aren't aware of. And it's those things that are going to keep you just chronically managing chronic symptoms until you end up dying from side effects or the treatment. And we don't want to do that. So again, functional lifestyle medicine, know how physiology works, know what we do to mess it up, stop messing it up, right? That's what we do.
That's right.
And that's why we're so good at what we do, because again, you are not broken. It is not genetic. 99% of people's problems are what you eat, drink, breathe, rub on your skin, and how you stress. All things you have the greatest control over. It's just having someone that can tell you those things, that knows the physiology, and can explain it in a way that is meaningful and compelling for you to actually do something that's hard and difficult.
Make the decision.
Yeah.
And I want to add to this too. You know, I talk a lot about energy and even, you know, the whole neurological aspect of all of this too. I have been listening for several months now to Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is a neuroscientist who is also talking about the same things and what we talked about last week, and how all of everything that we do, everything we choose to do in our life, affects us in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So that coupled with what you're doing is like, voila. Isn't that how you say it? Voila.
Voila.
So make...
Chanter le Marseillaise pour
Voila.
I kind of lost it.
Sorry.
Allons enfants de la patrie, le continu de la gloire. La Marseillaise pour Claude Joseph Roger de Lille.
Oui, oui.
Chantez avec moi.
Yeah, ce soir.
That's rough.
Okay, so next week.
What are we going to talk about?
Next week, well, the first thing we're going to do is we're gonna let y'all know who won.
Yes.
The free office visit.
For
so
sure.
Again, share this episode.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back and double check everything, and man, it's just really fun to be on this show with you. So.
Well.
Let's do it again.
I agree. I like hanging out with you here.
Yeah. Thank you.
You don't give me as much shit as Holly did, so that's pretty good. All right. So thank you guys. This is episode 174, I believe. So next week, I think we're gonna have a COVID talk.
Ooh.
It's kind of like, I haven't had one of those in a long time, but the new research from the CDC, I feel like this might be time to kind of wrap up information about that and kind of figure out where we're at.
I love that idea.
Yeah, so
Good
you know,
idea.
with Songbird Juice Company with Marty Spence, we had, I don't know if you guys ever saw our podcast. Oh, I'll play our song. Holly Hajaj made our theme song for that show,
Right.
Alive by Summer.
Yeah.
But we all survived, so.
Yeah, here we are.
So then, kind of now that we've been through this long enough and all the other countries been through it, we can kind of wrap up and say, were we right about what we thought about this? And then also, where do we go from here with what we know about COVID and the myths, the truth, the research, evidence.
And where we're going. I mean, kids are getting ready to go to school,
Yeah.
and so let's do that. Let's do some research and then talk about it next week.
Let's see if Dr. G can lose his license. Like, telling some truth here. So,
No.
all right. Thank you guys so much,
Ah.
and seriously, thank you for Suzanne
Absolutely.
being here.
Love
I really appreciate you guys, and for all those that watch it offline, post your questions. Also share this, and I can't wait to see you guys next week. All right.
Bye-bye.
That's not it.